Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber pretty much ask a question, which I'm going to flip in here for you guys. And he's talking about the fact that he's had to use different types of methods to not get lightheaded and dizzy when doing rep work on his deadlifts, and doing like a 3x5, or even doing deadlifts the way that he sees me doing them in videos. And so let's talk about that for a little bit. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on my crafting a little bit, see if I can get it to skill up. And yeah, let's talk about this. All right, deadlifts. Deadlifts are an extremely taxing exercise, and I don't think anyone who's done them heavy, particularly done them for reps, is going to deny that. Properly executed deadlifts are extremely taxing, and they're taxing on everything in your body. And it gets even more taxing when you start pulling off stuff like straps and everything else, because they're taxing on your entire core. They're taxing on your legs, your glutes, your hamstrings, your entire back. And then when you start pulling straps out and stuff, even your grip gets taxed, your grip, your forearms. There have been studies that have shown in the past that even noobs who deadlift, their biceps even grow from it. If they've never lifted before, they have no training experience, their biceps even grow from just the strain the deadlift puts on them. And no, guys, by the way, I'm not advocating that people do the deadlift as their bicep movements. If you're an advanced lifter, it's going to add inches to your biceps, because it won't. We're simply making the point that even for someone who's untrained, starting with small biceps, their bicep measurement goes up. That's how taxing it is overall to all of your musculature. But the same thing with your skeletal structure, just the weight that you're loading on your skeletal structure, on your entire shoulder girdle from the downward pull, on your spine, everything. And on top of that is taxing to your cardiovascular system. And many people have passed out while deadlifting. If you guys watch their videos online where it's funny, where guys do a deadlift and then they stagger over and they pass out, fall into a dumbbell rack, we've all seen these videos. That's because you can flat out run out of oxygen on this exercise. And that's true of a lot of different exercises. Breathing and even cardiovascular capacity, conditioning and everything play a tremendous role on a lot of these big lifts. Now, one of the things I'm going to say with the deadlift, as far as some of this stuff goes, intra-abdominal pressure, air and everything else, this is one of the reasons that I deadlift the way that I do. Particularly something I had to start doing a lot more of when I started doing volume deadlifting. If you guys recall, at one time I was doing 10 sets of 3 on the deadlift as often as 2 or 3 times a week sometimes. All right, that's something that will tax you very quickly. It will make you run out of breath. It will tax you in a lot of ways, and I learned a lot of tricks from having to do that in the past on how to control these things, how to keep from getting lightheaded, how to keep from getting dizzy. Obviously, number one on that list is going to be resets. I have already explained many times that bouncing the weight off the floor, touch and go deadlifts, is a one-way ticket to injury. I don't care how many people you know who do it, who are strong deadlifters. I don't care if George Lehman recommends it. George Lehman's a genetic freak with an insane work ethic that virtually no one I know in the training world matches, who is totally obsessed with lifting. But again, genetically, his structure is so enormous and so thick and so dense that he doesn't get injured doing things that I think are dangerous. It doesn't mean George is wrong for him. Dude is insanely strong. We're easily strong, one of the strongest men in the world. And when he says his goal is to be the strongest man in the world, I think he's serious. I think he's got a shot at it. And I think it's because of his work ethic and his bone structure and his genetics. But he can get away with things that you can't. So just because you see George Lehman do something or advocate something doesn't mean it's right for you. And people need to understand that difference. George is a very genetically gifted person who has an unusually high work ethic on top of it. That's why he's a born champion, basically. That's the way to look at it. And doesn't mean that his methods aren't going to get people injured. Touch and go deadlifts are out. Full weight resets are critical to avoid injuries, in my opinion. It's one of the best things you can do. Right up there with the faster eccentric reps, or no eccentric reps, which we'll get to in a minute. But not only does it help with injury prevention, that weight reset allows you to get air in. It allows you to get air in between. Because when you make a pull, each time you pull on the deadlift bar, you need to inhale deeply with your diaphragm. Use your diaphragm, and you need to have full lungs when you pull from the bottom. So you guys will notice I do a little hip drop and weight reset every time I deadlift. And if I need to, I might throw some clips of me deadlifting in at the end of this video so you guys have an idea of what I'm talking about if you don't know how I pull. Again, techniques I've learned from having to do heavy deadlifting for rep work or high sets like I've done in the past. All right, I do my little hip drop again, and it's basically pulling the slack back out of the bar and pulling the slack back out of my body. It's also useful for letting you get deep breath again, because as you're going to pull it back down, you can breathe in, and when you reset your hips a bit, you can get your lungs as full as possible. And getting your lungs full is one of the secrets to not passing out on the deadlift, because when you initiate the pull, if you have full lungs, it not only puts your thoracic region into a better position to avoid injuring your back, and that's one of the reasons you get away with like a mid-back rounding, a thoracic rounding like I do, is full lungs. It changes all the pressure inside of there. So those full lungs, again, help not only with injury prevention, but they keep you from passing out, which I guess helps with injury prevention too, because passing out and falling and hitting your head on something is a legitimate form of injury if the lifting itself caused you to pass out. So those full lungs when you do that. Then as you're driving, you start exhaling as you're pulling the weight up. Another big mistake I see a lot of guys do, and again, and I know some guys do it and some guys say, well, you seem to be stronger. Some people seem to be stronger if they hold their breath on the pull. I don't recommend you do that, because you're going to want to exhale, drive, get to the top, and get ready to get more air in again. I'm of the opinion that exhaling on the way up is better for overall safety, better off for overall lung capacity, keeping yourself from passing out. I think holding your breath at any point on the deadlift's a bad idea, but you need to have full lungs when you start the movement. And that resetting the bar, resetting your hips on every single rep is a fantastic way to give you a second to get air in. And you know what? If a person needs to rest for a couple of seconds between reps, if you need 2 full seconds with that bar on the floor to get more oxygen in, to get a deeper breath, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. In fact, do that. If that's what you need to do, then don't be afraid to do that. Don't be in a hurry to finish a deadlift set. Again, deadlifts are hard, they're heavy, they're taxing. They're not meant to be easy. They're meant to be challenging. You don't need to make it more challenging by running out of oxygen and injuring yourself. There's no point in doing that. It doesn't make you tougher or more hardcore. It just gets you hurt. Being unhurt and being consistent with this stuff, not getting lightheaded, is the best way to go. You start getting lightheaded on deadlifts, and you might be done with the rest of your training for the day. It could ruin your whole workout. You might not be able to do anything else after that. Again, deadlifting is taxing enough without making it harder. Other things, that slow eccentric, again, is one of those things to where it messes up some people's breathing. Again, I feel like the eccentric rep is where many people end up tearing things, because again, the micro tearing you tend to get from heavy eccentric work tends to put a lot of stress on like the spinal erectors, and I think on not so much biceps. I don't think it's about bicep tears. I think bicep tears are a totally different thing, but slow eccentrics on there, I think, not only risk giving you little micro tears in your back and everything that could turn into real tears. And again, as you guys see, there are plenty of deadlifters, extremely powerful lifters, who don't do eccentric reps at all, who have massive backs, massive erectors. It's not necessary to hypertrophy the back, but you're reducing the injury chance there. But again, that slow eccentric for some people really messes up their breathing, because it seems like some people, they get it to the top. If you've exhaled on the way up, what are you going to do? Re-get new air again and try to lower it? And it seems like those slow eccentrics, again, when you're using a heavy weight like that, those slow eccentrics can mess up that breathing pattern, and they can get you to a point to where you can't really, you're trying to lower it, trying to get more air in during the middle of that eccentric can really mess up your breathing pattern. Just my opinion, but I think it's a factor there. So that's the secondary reason I don't do the eccentric, because I want to get that bar to the ground, not have to worry about controlling an eccentric and worrying about my breathing further, so I can get more air in and get reset again at the bottom. Because the deadlift is about the pull anyways. That's where you get your power. That's where you get your strength. It's from pulling that weight off the floor explosively. That's where you get the explosive component of it that carries over into everything else that you do. Explosive concentric reps, that's all that matters. And again, it comes back to that point. Resetting and getting full lungs helps you focus on that explosiveness more. All right, other factors to consider, your cardiovascular conditioning. If you're doing all of these things and you're still having trouble on the deadlift, you can't come in and do 10 sets of 3 on the deadlift if you have to. Not that I recommend that everyone do high sets, but they have their place in training. I've certainly used them in the past. But if you're doing these things and you're still getting lightheaded on the deadlift, you just might be out of shape. And again, being in shape is not body composition. That's something the bodybuilding world always throws out there. No one else looks at it that way. Being in shape is about conditioning. And again, they use the wrong word there also. Conditioning is about your cardiovascular conditioning, your stamina, your conditioning for the specific sports you're competing in. Meaning peak conditioning for a boxer may not be the same as for a sprinter or for an endurance runner. It's about, do you have the stamina for your cardiovascular system and heart to keep up with what you were subjecting it to? In this case, the deadlift. If you can't deadlift without running out of air when you use these other techniques, you're still getting lightheaded, having these problems, you're just out of shape. You need to do more cardio. Another reason I've started to tell people over the last couple of years, it's really, really important for strength athletes to do list cardio. All right, list cardio is something you really need. There's a reason you see guys like Alex Viada out there having all these guys do this. Even Greg Knuckles finally accepted this concept. And, you know, Greg Knuckles, once you look at him, the dude is strong. He knows science. Dude is brutally strong. He's not what most of you guys would think of as in shape. He would be fat by internet training standards. But he does cardio every day. Guy squats like 700 pounds. Big advocate of list cardio also after he reported his own results on it. So you've got some of these guys out there who are really talking about that, but that's another big factor. List cardio gives you stamina, it gives you endurance, it improves capillarization, it enhances your body's ability to clear waste products. That can carry over to things like your deadlifting. If your body is not capable of clearing waste products more efficiently, those metabolites and things can accumulate too quickly in the middle of deadlifting. And even though people don't think of it that way, we're like, really just a short little bit of deadlifting shouldn't need better waste product clearing, but it can help. It can absolutely help. And doing low intensity cardio, large volumes of it, improves your overall stamina. People say, well, that's not getting in shape. Well, really? You guys are telling me that someone who can run 20 miles isn't in shape? And you see a lot of guys who will argue about that, but then you go have them try to do some long list cardio and then they can't do it because they're not really in the shape they think they're in. You got to remember, there are different types of cardio, different types of conditioning that have carryover to different things. They all have their role. Just like I would say, if someone is truly in shape, they're going to do a mixture of list cardio and GPP work of some type for their conditioning. And I would say for most people, that gives the best overall conditioning instead of necessarily Tabata and sprints and things like that. And no, do GPP work for your higher intensity stuff because that'll give you a strength component to your conditioning. But then you can rely upon the list cardio to give you larger amounts of work capacity, overall better recovery, but more importantly, help you clear waste products. And that clearing of waste products is tremendous when you start getting into heavy deadlifts sometimes for reps, or when you start doing high rep squats, for example. You ever do high rep squats with a moderately heavy weight, or like the 20 rep squat program? If you've done a lot of list work and you're conditioned for it, it's going to go a lot easier on you. It's going to go a lot better on you. And you're just going to find it easier to recover from, and you're going to be less likely to get lightheaded, less likely to pass out, and all of that in the middle of your training. And why? Because you're simply in better shape with better capillarization through all your muscles. And that can make a big difference. It can actually reduce your need for oxygen capacity even in the middle of a set. And that's a big deal. So there's your keys, guys. That's what you do about it. That's how you make sure you get enough oxygen when you deadlift so that you don't get lightheaded, you don't get woozy, and you don't have these other problems. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.